How would you like to stop dieting, stop counting calories, points, and start getting some pleasure in all areas, but especially from your food? Well, you're in the right place. I'm Deborah Atkinson. You're listening to Flipping 50, where I address your top concerns and struggles and inspire you so that you can have the energy and the vitality that you want, need, and deserve in the second and better half. I share what to eat, how to move, and how to change your mindset so that you can do all of that. And today's episode may or may not have a scene where there was dress splitting going on by my interviewee. You'll have to listen to the episode to hear all the dirty details, but you're in the right place if you're also looking to gain some strength. Gaining muscle is far more pleasurable than thinking about losing fat, and I have the perfect way for you to do it. If you're in need of a start or a restart, Flipping 50's Stronger programs, and actually there are or will very soon be 6 of them. They're each 12-week programs, but there is always one that we will make specially available to the public. And this month it is Stronger, Tone, and Define, using slightly lighter weights in a slightly higher repetition range, making it a perfect place to get started or to restart your spring training. If you're not on the list and you're listening to this in March of 2021, now's the time to get there. It'll be at flipping50.com/get stronger. No spaces between those two words. And you'll find out the details. And if you happen to be listening to this juicy podcast episode after the fact, we always have a wait list. You can put your name on that and you'll be notified when the next one opens up. All right, let's dive in because I am absolutely sure you are going to love my guest as much as I loved interviewing her. My guest today is Esther Blum, and she's an integrative dietitian and high performance coach. She currently maintains a private practice where she helps women permanently lose weight, eliminate the need for medication, lose stubborn belly fat, and reverse chronic illness. Esther is the best-selling author of Cavewomen Don't Get Fat, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, Secrets of Gorgeous, and the Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous Project, and has appeared on, listen to this, Dr. Oz, The Today Show, and Fox News Live. Esther Blum, thanks so much for joining me here on Flipping 50.
I am stoked. Thanks for having me, Deborah.
That's quite an introduction. So I'm among good company. You are the girl where all the cool kids are.
I used to be, my 6-year anniversary of being on the Dr. Oz show popped up on my news feed. And I was like, wow, that is like a lifetime ago, right? I mean,
yeah.
It really was divine timing.
And especially during this year, I think we can all agree. It feels like a lifetime ago to say back in when? Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, I miss having hair and makeup done and all that, glamming up. That was also fun.
So good. One day, maybe again. Yeah. All right. Before I dive into questions, and we really want to use and abuse you while you're here, but I love to know the backstory. I mean, you could be a plumber, a lawyer, a teacher, doctor, gynecologist. Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I was really born with this in my blood. My grandfather was the tonsil king of Brooklyn. He was an amazing ears, nose, and throat doctor. He practiced medicine until he was 95 and a half, and he did surgery till he was 80, and he lived to be 105 and a half. And he and my grandmother took my tonsils out in their they had a 4-story home in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and then they had a house, a big farm, a 25-acre farm in Connecticut. So in their Brooklyn house, on the first floor, they had a waiting room, they had a consultation and treatment room, they had an operating room, and then they had a 12-bed pediatric recovery room and 2 adult recovery beds. So like he would fix up Al Capone's guys when they, got their nose busted by some henchman. And he did like tonsillectomies, 12-hour days. And he trained my grandmother. She was a dietitian. He trained her to be the anesthesiologist. So she was the one like putting the ether mask over my face. I was 6 years old. And he took my tonsils out. And so, I just like slept over Nanny and Poppy's house, had my tonsils out, and then went home. And it was like, I was never in the hospital until I was, giving birth basically. So, and then my father was a dermatologist. My mother was a nurse. And so, science was totally in my blood. It was interesting to me. I saw my grandfather and my father doing house calls on weekends and just serving their patients so tirelessly and just from such a humble place. And, so I was always inspired by it, but I didn't want to go to med school. I knew, I was just a really long road and I really sucked at physics. So I was like, all right, well, nutrition is pre-med minus, the physics and it's a little less chemistry. So I told my grandfather, I was like, Poppy, I'm going to be a dietitian. And he was like, what are you thinking? You're never going to be a success and you're never going to make money. And I was like, oh yeah, you watch me. So like, it's on. I was like, it is on. So, but he ended up very proud of me and was very supportive, of course. And actually, so I worked in hospitals for the first 5 years, and that was just the best clinical experience in the world because, when you're feeding someone through a tube or an IV on a ventilator, you really got to know your biochemistry, your drug nutrient interactions, all those things. But then when people got out, I worked in cardiology units and I had 10 minutes to give people diet instruction and then I'd never see them again. And they were 85 years old. They just had a heart attack. So I thought, I love the clinical atmosphere, but I'm really not making a difference long-term. So I totally went rogue and got certified in functional medicine and left the hospital and began my tenure, on the second part of my career. And that was really the best decision. And of course, my puppy gave me money for the course. He was like, do you need some money to pay your student loans? I was like, yes, but can I please parlay it into more education? So he was like, sure. So that was really divine. It was really great.
That is an awesome story. And
Yeah.
listeners, you have to know, I did not know that backstory. So I'm so fortunate that I asked. I mean, knock on wood, good on me. Okay. Love that. All right. Now you, right? How do you practice mindful eating? How do you
Okay.
stay dialed
So,
into that eating experience? And I know I totally blew our experiment today.
yeah, well, let me just let's just discuss the backstory because Deborah and I were talking and I was like, I need you to do an exercise for me and I need you to go get your favorite indulgence, like and chocolate or ice cream. And you said, I don't even have any in the house. So you're the first person I've ever met to have that conversation with because I have a whole chocolate shelf in my pantry, and my boys, my husband's son, they have a whole ice cream drawer. And I really learned. So again, the backstory is there's always a backstory, right, of what shapes us as humans. And I grew up in a house. My mother's mother was a beauty pageant queen. Okay, she was tiny. Well, my mom had her dad's build and was broader and had a completely different figure, skinny, gorgeous legs, very lean legs, but her weight centered in her middle. So from a young age, she was fat shamed or body shamed. And, so I grew up in a house where she would always hide candy wrappers everywhere. Like I'd open a drawer to get out pot holders and Tootsie Roll wrappers would explode at me. And I was like, Mom, put these all in a dish on a shelf, like in the living room or the den or whatever. And, I see that other people do that. Why can't you do that? So she always had a lot of shame around food. And I never understood that. I always really enjoyed my food. I was taught to, I really grew up thinking pleasure was its own nutrient in and of itself. So, and to me, it really is. And so, how do I keep eating simple? But I had different times in my life where eating was a tortured experience because I was really sick at one point in my 20s. When I was at the hospital, there was this vendor, we called her the tuna fish lady, and she made the most delicious tuna fish with fresh tomato slices in pita bread, right? So I would have that every day for lunch. And I developed a whopping case of mercury toxicity.
Ooh.
And like gained 20 pounds in 3 months. And I'm 5'3.5".
Oh, wow.
And I was at the gym lifting super lean, went from a size 4 to like an 8. And I was like, I didn't even recognize or understand my body and had so much shame around it. And so began furiously trying to diet, not understanding no matter what I did until we got the mercury out, which took about 6 months, and my thyroid recovered, that I wouldn't get that weight off. And so one day, my parents and I were on the way to my cousin's wedding in Central Park. I wrote a whole blog about this, and I hadn't shopped for a dress because I gained all this weight. And so I went to put on this red dress that normally looked amazing on. And it was like, my mom was zipping up. She was trying to get this dress around, my sausage body, right? And fat, just the bra fat just exploded over the sides. And I was like, oh my God, cry. So she's like, just put a sweater on. And so I'm toddling out to the taxi cab because it's so tight. And as I go to step in, the dress rips all the way up to my ass in the back.
Oh my gosh.
So I was like, I am never doing this to myself again. I'm going to be kind to myself, and I'm going to stop the dieting, and I'm going to buy clothes that fit me and cut out the labels and not give a crap about what about the numbers anymore. Just love myself as I am. And that's when, I met my husband actually at my heaviest weight. He was like, he didn't even care at all. He didn't even notice it, which is so funny to me because I couldn't escape it. But I really decided to, once my thyroid got fixed, I really decided to start listening to my body and just saying, what does my body need? What's going to fuel me? What's going to help give me energy, mental focus, sleep well, not be craving all the time? What are the real foods that my body needs to eat? And so, and doing that, it creates a tremendous amount of abundance around food. Instead of saying, I can't eat that, you can say, I don't eat that because it doesn't serve me, right? Or I could eat that if I want to, but I may not see results, in body composition that I'm looking for, or I just may feel a little tired and draggy. And that's kind of how I am to this day. So if I really want something, I let myself have it. But so the exercise that I would love all of you listeners to do right now, if you can, is go grab your favorite indulgence, right? For some of you, that's brownies or cookies. For some of you, it's some sips of wine. But what you do is you put it in your mouth, and especially if it's chocolate, you press it to the roof of your mouth to really activate the pleasure centers in your brain. And you hold it there. You don't chew it, right? So on one call, I call this my satisfaction action, by the way. So on one call, a woman put a cashew in her mouth and just held the cashew there, right? So you start to learn to actually taste the food. Now, I've done this in a room of 350 people when I was giving a talk, and I gave them a potato chip and a Hershey Kiss. And what I noticed, I first did this exercise when I was attending a Janine Roth workshop. And what I noticed is the food didn't taste as good when the flavors unfolded. Because I was eating a potato chip, so I could taste all the rancidity and the crappy oils in there, which I had never noticed before. And then with the Hershey Kiss, I was like, wow, this is really gritty crap chocolate. Yeah. Versus, now obviously I have dark chocolate and I don't crave it much, but when I want it, I let myself have it. And I really taste the bitterness and then the sweetness. You taste all the different notes as they progress. Mm-hmm. You really taste your food, and you should smell your food too. So much of taste is actually smell. And we don't engage all of our senses when we're eating. We're most of us are on the phone eating. Oh, let me check my Instagram feed. Let me, we're totally distracted. And you have to be radically present when you eat. And that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. If you've had an unhealthy relationship with food, if you've been shamed about your body, the last thing you want to do is be present when you're eating. But when you're present, you actually watch the food disappear off your plate and go into your mouth and then your stomach. And so your brain is connected to your stomach, and you can register your fullness. You can register taste. You can slow down. You put your fork down between bites. You can ask yourself, am I full? Am I satisfied? Like, do I want more? I find often I just get sick of eating before I'm even full. Like, I've had enough. I'm just tired of tasting the same thing over and over again. Because I like to pile my plate high, even though I don't eat it all the time. I just like to curate abundance, right? Because I had
Yeah.
scarcity around me for so many years. So I like a full plate. And then I end up taking it home. We went out to dinner last night. I usually eat like half my portion and take the rest home because I'm like, it was so satisfying. So instead of spending, this is another thing I do, instead of spending all my mental real estate saying, well, I shouldn't eat this and I shouldn't eat that, I'm like, what do you really want? What now? Obviously, if you have autoimmune conditions, if you have medical issues, if you have gut inflammation, you're paying attention to your body composition, this may be a slightly different conversation for you.
Mm-hmm.
But no matter what you're eating, because I don't want to sweep that under the rug, but no matter what you're eating, if you're like, oh my God, this is just, I really want to eat that. Or let's say you want French fries really badly. You know, you can order a mashed potato or a baked potato, or you order the French fries, and right, instead of, you can eat around the craving, but you might eat more because you're not as satisfied. Or you eat exactly what you want and you commit to stopping when you're full or before you're full, just when you're satisfied even.
Mm-hmm.
That is huge. You will never overeat again when you are satisfied.
So I have a question that I'm just going to guess that listeners might be asking, and that would be, so what's your take on portion control?
Yeah. Well, obviously, you know, you want to make sure, if let's say you're somebody who is overweight or just trying to lose weight, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I recommend that you do measure things out. So for example, if you buy a pound of meat, right? I'm going to say divide it into 3 or 4 portions and make a burger or some meatballs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just start there and have, you know, a medium baked potato and the rest of your plate is veggies, right? Or a sweet potato. And if you're hungry, you honor your body and you can take more. If you're listening to your body and you say, what's my sleep like? What's my, what are my workouts like? What's my stress like? Am I dialed into eating? You know, all of those things can have an impact. Having a menstrual cycle has an impact. The first half of the month, you're way more insulin sensitive than the second half of the month, right? So you're going to eat more 10 days out from your period starting than you are, you know, in the beginning of the cycle, after the first week of your period. Mm-hmm. Or if you're going through menopause and you're getting these massive estrogen surges, yeah, your appetite is going to be thrown off. You may be hungry or you may be craving like crazy. So you want to dial in and ask yourself all those questions. But assuming all of that's dialed in, right? When you practice, you can start from a place of portion control to answer your question and then allow yourself more. Mm-hmm. Or you can start with a full plate, just full on entree of what you eat in restaurants, which is usually double the portion of what you need anyway. You can divide it in half and say, let me eat the first half and see how I feel. I can always get the rest taken away after. And in time, this isn't like an overnight thing. I don't want to sound like some cocky jerk here who's just doling out advice. This is stuff I really had to learn to manage myself because I knew I wanted to develop a healthy relationship with food in my body long term. So you have to go through that kind of work of saying, how much do I want? Am I checked into eating? It's a daily conversation. I have 3 times a day for meals and snacks. But I have learned that, 3 cocoa covered cacao beans, which look like almonds, that's enough of a treat for me. Desserts don't taste better or get more satisfying after the third bite. After that, it's just mindless for me.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you led with the abundance thinking, that abundance mindset, because it is, of course, it's simplistic to say, but so backwards or opposite the dogma of control and less, and which makes us, of course, want more and more and
Yeah.
rebel.
Well, yeah, because I did a day-long workshop in New York a couple years ago, and I printed out recently, actually, I found it again. We did, whiteboards, and I put these sheets all over the room, and what dieting was like. And what we came to conclude, the main takeaway is that they were the most misogynistic things in the world for women, because they're telling you to be smaller, to make yourself smaller, make yourself unseen. If you have extra body weight, that's a negative thing. And from a health perspective, of course, I want people to be healthy and lean, but it goes so much deeper than that. And so the other problem with diet is it disconnects you from your body. You, for example, might do well on keto. I could do well on vegan. Like, who is anyone to
Right.
say, this is exactly the diet you should be following? No, that's not necessarily it. You have to be a diet detective and take time and say, what makes me feel best? What's going to give me the most energy? What's going to help me change my body composition? I have some clients that have chronic illness and we need to go plant-based for a while, or we need to heal up a fatty liver and go plant-based for a while. I have other clients that are, close to 300 pounds and need to resensitize their insulin receptors and need to do fasting and glucose monitoring and, be on 50 grams of carbs a day. So everyone is so metabolically unique, and everyone, it comes from such a different mindset around eating too. Some people have had, and you have to take into account also, like, childhood traumas. You have to take into account the external messaging that my people were often told as children about their bodies, and then they permanently internalized them and then thought, this is me. This is really the true version of me, when that isn't true. So you have to reconcile the past and the present narrative that's going on inside someone's head. And a great way to do that is through abundance. So oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Well, I want you to finish that thought, because something just triggered a question that I want to ask you next.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, there was also a great study in a psychiatry journal where basically it was very interesting. It was either a study or an article, but there was a boy that was very overweight, and his mom took him to the doctor, a psychiatrist. And she said, he's so overweight, I can't get him to stop eating. He's always like secretively hiding food and eating. He said, great, what's his favorite junk food? She said, peanut M&Ms. He was like, go fill a pillowcase with those peanut M&Ms. And of course, she thought he was nuts, but she did it. And, of course, the first couple days, it was, a free for all.
Right.
By the third day, he was like, enough, because it's always something that's always present is so unsexy and untempting. There's no way it holds power over you anymore. But the more restrictive you are, I mean, if somebody said to me, you can never eat a lick of pasta again, or you can never have a martini, I'd be like, nice knowing you. And go face plant into a trough of pasta with a martini dumped over it. No, that's not happening. It's not happening. And so it's, to me, just knowing I can have, I have a shelf of chocolate, as I mentioned, and baking mix and cookies. I don't make that stuff. It's just there. And I just like knowing it's there. It's like a security blanket for me. It's pretty. It's happy. But I don't sit and binge on it. I'm not like snorting lines of chocolate chips every night.
Oh, okay. Well, there goes that image. Okay. What about, so you mentioned like this, moment in time in the past. So we're in a moment in time, and we are literally, as we record, I mean, we are days away from this being 365 days in the pandemic. And I'm sure you heard it. I know I heard it. And what do you tell somebody who may have been face planting into a bag of chips and has gained weight during COVID?
Yeah. Is we really start getting them very mindful around their eating. I start having people put their phone away, sometimes on a different floor of the house if they need to during their meals.
Mm.
I have them do what's called the hunger fullness scale. This is something I'm actually creating a sheet with this, where, one is absolutely like ravenous. You're just going to eat whatever somebody puts in front of you, live animals, small children, whatever. And then 10, 10
Liver,
is like
onions.
liver.
Okay.
Oh, I love liver and onions. That would be a treat for me. Uh,
Come on over. I'll give you mine.
My husband would be like, that liver didn't stand a chance. He like watches me just eat meat off the bones. He's like, oh my God. but yeah, so 1 is like ridiculously hungry. 10 is completely overstuffed. So a lot of people don't even know when they're hungry and when they're full. So I have them start tracking before and after meals. Where are you when you're starting? You don't want to be overly ravenous. You want to start around a 3 or 4 and end around a 7 or 8 where you're satisfied, but you can push your plate away and always come back to it later. And so that's very helpful. Keeping a food log is the ultimate form of cognitive behavioral therapy. And, MyFitnessPal is a great free one. It's fine. There's many out there. But writing it, if you bite it, you write it. So if you have to write something down, you're going to think twice about, I don't want this to show up on paper. So you can either eat what you want and not write it down, but feel horribly shamed, or you write it down. The truth shall set you free. You see the numbers. You're like, this actually isn't as bad as I thought it was. And you can manage it and say, all right, fine. I had 2 bags of M&Ms at 3 p.m. So, okay, that's, let's call it, I don't know, let's call it like 60, 70 grams of sugar, right? So you're like, okay, at dinner, I'm just going to have protein and veggies. And it starts to get you to just put the numbers in black and white. So it takes all the emotion out of eating. It's just, am I heading toward my goals or am I off track? Do I need to adjust my numbers tomorrow? Maybe tomorrow will be a lower carb day for me. But it's very empowering because it makes it a choice versus, my so-and-so told me this. I have to eat this amount.
Yes.
Or I can't eat carbs because some fitness expert on YouTube told me I can't. Versus, again, taking all that power back, taking all the ownership back and saying, how do I feel not eating a lot of carbs? How do I feel eating a lot of carbs? Carbs are not the enemy, women. Just that's kind of the take-home message of today's podcast.
Right.
But they can be used strategically, right? And so those are kind of the starting places of just, am I hungry? Do I even want to eat this? Or am I just pissed off right now at something else?
Mm-hmm.
Do I maybe need to like go work out or have sex instead or call a friend or take a bath? Like what's really going on here? Why did I drink 3 glasses of wine last night? What am I numbing? Like, am I bored? Which we're all a little bored. Let's be clear.
For sure. Okay, I want to come back to something. So right there, you hit on something. This has been a question in the back of my mind because we're talking about pleasure, really. I mean, and talking about bringing the pleasure back into this experience. So, when I imagined, savoring a bite of one of those foods, that's pleasure. Maybe I just have a dirty mind, but immediately I go to, this is potentially going to change your sex life. I mean, is there a connection?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm so glad you brought that up. Okay, so this is my first book, Eat, Drink, and Be Gorgeous, right? The whole motto is,
Love it.
Your body may be a temple, but who says it can't be a nightclub, right? And I
Versus a condo, right? Okay, got it.
right, exactly, versus a condo. But the whole motto is that pleasure is the gateway. Pleasure in your eating leads to pleasure in other areas of your life. So sex,
Okay, time out.
sensuality, yes.
Can this be then part of, you mentioned childhood trauma?
Yeah.
So can like going the opposite way with control and food be, somehow tied to, childhood trauma that may have been of a sexual nature? And we
Mm.
don't need to go too far down this path, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So you're saying if somebody's been sexually abused, are they able to heal and put the pleasure back in eating and their sex life?
Well, following up with that, but
Yeah.
do you notice that there's a parallel and often there's control and you are dieting, maybe without knowing it, because that is in your past and you haven't let go of that or healed from it?
Yes, I do see extreme, disordered eating, I'll call it. I don't work much with eating disorders per se, but I do see a lot of disordered eating or unhealthy relationships with food.
Hmm.
And it shows up usually what I see in practice. Again, I'm a small portion of what's out there, but what I see in practice is totally being checked out of the eating experience. A lot of dashboard dining, like eating in the car, standing up at the counter is
Hmm.
another very common one. Like
Ooh.
people just eat. One of my clients like eats at the counter while she's cooked a beautiful meal for her family, her husband, 2 sons, and they eat at the table sitting down, and she's up eating at the counter. And there's a worthiness issue. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve pleasure. I'm not a good girl, right? I'm a bad girl, or the messages that are internalized. Therefore, I don't deserve food. I don't deserve love. It manifests itself that way. But yes, once you get
Interesting.
people, it's very traumatic for a lot of people who've had severe abuse, especially sexual abuse, to stay present in their eating and to love themselves that way, to like
Mm,
really nourish themselves. It's true
yeah,
nourishment. So
yeah.
I had another patient who her parents were divorced, and her her dad would go out to dinner with his new girlfriend, and the cupboards would be bare. And she was like, "Dad, could you bring me home food from the restaurant? Can you bring me?" And he wouldn't bring her any food. So she was like really hungry. And so when we worked together, like her biggest addiction was Diet Coke. She didn't want to give up Diet Coke at all. That was like the last thing to go. And she really clung to that because that was just her feel good thing. So you also see people clinging to like old habits that are not serving them also, but there could be far worse things in life than Diet Coke, of course. So, but it's sometimes the point is some people will, deny releasing what isn't serving them. It's like a little bit of self-destruction in there too. And
Got it.
of course, booze and drugs and,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
gateways.
yeah.
There's lots of gateways to torturing ourselves. And so, but what people learn is that, your pleasure does not preclude you from being a good person. It's the two are not, mutually exclusive. So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
It's been such a gem to have you here and all lots of little nuggets. I have copious notes over here of little things that you'll be seeing again, listeners. But before I let you go and before we tell listeners where they can get more, Esther, we have you here. You're the expert. Is there a question that, knowing we're talking to women 45 to 70, is there a question I should have asked you?
Well, I don't know if it's a question per se, but I can tell you your body keeps the score and your body is wise beyond words. So we've been taught a lot to shut those voices down or to not listen, especially if we've been to a practitioner that's like, you're fine, especially with your health. If you think something's wrong or off kilter, like work with someone who is going to listen to you and not tell you you're just normal. You want someone who's going to optimize you and take your struggles seriously or your health ailments seriously, that's something else I like to impart in women, because medicine's a business like any other. So if your doctor's not good, go find a new one. If your doctor won't prescribe you hormones, go find a new one. If your doctor won't, listen to you, just go find a new one. No problem. Because that's really the most empowering thing you can do for yourself. You know your body. There is not a human out there, and I work with men too, but who's not wildly intuitive about their bodies and just often struggles to find someone to listen to them. So
love that.
Find a good practitioner.
Mm-hmm. So love that. Okay. And where can listeners get more Esther?
So they can go to estherblum.com. That's ESTHERBLUM. And so, Deborah, for the next 6 listeners, I was like, how many? I cleared spaces in my calendar for next week. You go to estherblum.com/call for a 30-minute consultation. This is completely complimentary. This is for people who are serious about creating change in their health, who have specific goals with, hormone help or weight loss or sleep management or getting off medications, all of those things. You just go to estherblum.com/call, and you'll leave with 3 strategic needle movers that will help you reach your health goals.
So great. So generous. Thank you so much. And we'll have your social links here too for listeners. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
And listeners, if there is a question that I missed that you have, you can leave that below the show notes at flipping50.com/pleasure. What else would I call this one, right? So, what are you waiting for? Let's start flipping 50 today.